right, for more now on Governor Cuomo's decision to step down, we're joined by political analyst Brian Sobel. Brian, great to have you on today here. I'm curious what surprises you more, that someone known as a political fighter like Governor Cuomo is resigning in this situation, or the fact that it took him this long in the face of such intense political and public pressure?
Alex, the latter. I think as this story went on and it became like an avalanche, and you just wondered what would tip the governor over the top to say enough is enough. And I think he did a calculation on the legislature in New York and knew he couldn't survive impeachment and that this was going to drag out and it was time to pull the plug.
We did not get a full-throated apology whatsoever from Governor Cuomo as he announced his resignation. He essentially said if he did cross the line with women, it was only because he didn't know exactly where the line was in this day and age. Why remain so defiant as you resigned?
Well, Andrew Cuomo has been, since the beginning of his career, a fighter. And you'll recall, Alex, that at the height of the COVID pandemic, he was on television every day. And to show you how somebody can go from the penthouse to the outhouse, that's the political story of Cuomo. And so I just think he can't turn off that fighting style of his. And eventually it catches up to you. And when he talked today in his speech about how the line had moved, he hadn't done anything different, but the lines had moved. I thought, boy, that's a reach. It sounded actually very much like the initial defense put forth by President Clinton with respect to Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah. I mean, Cuomo also went on to say that, in essence, part of his rationale, it was that he didn't want to stay in office because to fight these allegations, which he said he wanted to do, would really sort of tie up the government there in New York with impeachment proceedings. It would cost the taxpayers millions of dollars. What do you make of the way he sort of tried to frame things as he walks out the door?
Well, this was a total defense. It started with a 45-minute talk by his attorney explaining line for line why Cuomo hadn't done anything wrong. And it ended up with Cuomo essentially saying the same thing. But people have to know that he isn't resigning today. He's resigning in 2 weeks, which I thought was an interesting thing. He could have resigned today and turned it over to Kathy Hochul, the lieutenant governor there. So, kind of fighting and going out on his own terms. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, speaking of the lieutenant governor, Kathy Hochul, she will be the first woman to hold that post in the state of New York. Obviously very significant there, but how big is the challenge for her taking over in this role, given what has taken place?
New York's a huge state. She comes from the Buffalo area. She was in the House of Representatives. She's a moderate Democrat, and she is going to have a huge challenge governing the state of New York with New York City there. We have watched for the longest time the arguments between the New York City and the state of New York. New York City is almost a nation state itself, and it's very similar to what you see in California and some of the challenges that Governor Newsom has with governing a state that includes Los Angeles and San Francisco, and it's a very hard place to govern overall.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, very challenging to govern these large states like New York and California, for that matter. All right, we appreciate you coming on to give us your insight here. Political analyst Brian Sobel, thank you for doing it.
Have a good evening, Alex.
Right, you too. Take care.